County Commissioners meeting to order. At this time, I will ask Commissioner Jones to lead us in the invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's pray. Father, we come here tonight and we thank you for your mercy, your grace, and your goodness. We thank you, Father, for placing us in this freest of all lands. And Father, July 4th that we've just celebrated, we thank you for men and women who have fought and bled and died that our nation and the world might be free in many places. And so, Lord, we come here and we just give you the honor that you're due. We thank you for this great county you've placed us in. We thank you for our schools. We thank you for our law enforcement. We thank you for our fire, our EMS, Father, that keep our streets safe. And, Father, those that educate our children, Father, and make this a great place to raise a family. And, Lord, tonight we especially want to lift up two of our families in this county that are hurting, Father, the Barber family. Father, give them peace during this time. Father, we pray for the Holler family. Father, Gaynell was a longtime employee of this county, and she's lost her precious husband, Henry, and we give prayers of peace for that wonderful family. And so, Lord, tonight, give us the strength, the courage, and the boldness to carry on the business of this great county. And, Father, to not even so much as satisfy the agendas of men, Father, but satisfy your will. And, Father, what you would have us do in this great place you've given us to live. And so, Lord, we thank you, and we pray this prayer in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Before we say the Pledge of Allegiance, as Commissioner Jones alluded to, we just had July the 4th, and let us, as a people, never forget that freedom is not free, and our flag is under attack internally, which is kind of disappointing. So when we say the Pledge of Allegiance, let's keep that in mind. If you would stand and join us.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. That approved. Thank you. Next, we move to the public comment. All right, next, we have a couple very special presentations. We will start with Mr. Stuart Parker. I'll ask the sheriff to come forward.
Thank you for giving me just a moment to speak to y'all. You have on your agenda tonight something that we typically do when a deputy retires, but there's an added item on that agenda, and I'll talk to you about that in just a second. Stuart Parker is retiring, or has retired officially July 1st from the sheriff's office. We typically have a little retirement ceremony when somebody retires, but Stuart, being the humble soul that he is, absolutely refused to let us do that. So we got him a plaque. We presented it to him. We took him to lunch, the senior staff. And then I talked him into coming to this tonight because he had no idea we were going to do this. So, Stuart, if you'd step up here, I'd like to take just a minute and talk about you. Stuart Parker has been my friend for a long time and a fellow deputy. He has a couple of unique things. He's retired with 30 years of service, all to Davie County. Now, I know the county has a lot of folks that retire, some of them with 30 years of service. But in the sheriff's office, that's extremely rare. Not many people make the full 30 years with all that 30 years being to Davie County. Stuart has done that, and he has served this county quietly and admirably for an entire lifetime almost now. He's been a patrol officer. He's worked in the jail. He was an SRO in our high schools when there was only one SRO in this entire county. He's been a detective and my partner when we both were just regular detectives. Then I got promoted, and I knew as soon as I got promoted to a captain that I needed a lieutenant over the Criminal Investigations Division, and that was Stuart Parker. Then Stuart got promoted to the captain, and he served as a captain over our patrol division. He served as the captain over our Criminal Investigations Division. And lastly, he's been serving as a captain handling some extremely delicate projects inside the sheriff's office that I will be forever grateful for him doing that. Now let's talk about the extra item. Stuart asked me if he could get his shotgun given to him as a retirement, along with the typical handgun and badge that we give folks. I agreed to do that if you gentlemen would be so kind as to agree to delete it from the county's rolls. And here's the reason. It's a prime example of how Stuart has served our county. Stuart was issued a shotgun 30 years ago. That's the shotgun he's asked for. He's had the same shotgun in service for 30 years serving Davie County. Now you think about that, some of you shoot. That's a shotgun riding around every day in the trunk of a car in the heat, the weather changes, the rain. I've had 4 shotguns issued to me in my career, and I hadn't made 30 years yet. Stuart's maintained that gun for 30 years. And if you gentlemen see fit, I'd really like to give that to him in addition to what we typically give retiring deputies, to thank him for his service to Davie County. That is a prime example of how he served the county with care and precision and confidence. And Stuart, I also asked to get me a flag so I could present you with a Davie County flag. And thank you for 30 years of service, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. If you would indulge me, gentlemen, 1 second.
Yeah.
So let's get the wife right quick. The other half, the better half.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Parker, you got anything you want to say?
You can do this.
I won't take long. I just want to say that I appreciate everything this county's done for me over the years, and genuinely appreciated being able to serve this county and all the citizens of this county. And I'm going to miss it, but I'll be back a little bit here and there, so maybe it won't be so big. Y'all take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stuart, I would like to say something additional to you, if I may, because I've worked with you before. Stuart is not only an amazing officer, but he is an amazing Christian man. And I just appreciate all the years that I've been able to know you and go to church with you and work with you in the past. And just thank you so much for serving so wonderfully and being such a great example. So.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion that we not only award him his revolver, pistol, but also his shotgun.
Okay. Motion.
Second.
Second. Any discussion on that? All right, seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. All right. Keep that shotgun in good repair. So, all right. Next presentation is a award to EMS, so Mr. Eller.
I'd like to ask Mr. Bird and Mr. Ashburn to, or Joe, you come on up to accept it. Mr. Bird, you come up as a cheerleader or cheer from back there. Okay, that's fine too. That's fine too. Speaking of humble gentlemen, Stuart definitely being one, but Joseph, I don't think anyone knows how much time and effort you spend and devote to EMS, and we're just so proud of you and all of your crews. I wanted to spend a minute letting the board know that our EMS award for the AHA Lifetime Gold Plus award is now given for the 5th consecutive year. And I wanted Joseph to have the opportunity for us not only to show you this award that was given to us by Wake Forest Baptist Health, but for him to tell you the importance of this award, how it compares to other places. I know for rural counties to get this 5 years in a row, it's exceedingly rare, but it also shows what a great job our EMS folks do. So, Joseph, I want to give you the award that you received so you can explain it, but then also tell the board and the public a little bit about what this award really means, and so we can all honor your folks and thank you and Mr. Byrd for the great work that all of EMS does. So thank you.
I'd like to thank the board for letting us go through and do our jobs as far as on the EMS side. This is very rare for us to be able to receive this award from Mission Lifeline, American Heart Association. There is a lot of time standards that goes into it. There's a lot of documentation and patient care. When we went through and started this process several years ago and started receiving these awards, it wasn't the simple fact of it's an award or whatever, but it was to let our guys know, hey, you're meeting these standards, you're exceeding these standards, and you're going through and taking the best care of our citizens that we can possibly do. They've actually keep adding, if you notice, it said a plus to it. They add different standards every year. We don't know what the standards are until they come out, so we can't go through and prepare a year ahead of time to as far as what we're going to go through and get and what we're going to go through and try to achieve. Our work of our guys is just tremendous. You've got 90 employees on the EMS side of it that day in and day out, they come up and give you everything that they've got to meet these standards to take care of our citizens. Whenever things aren't going right, they come and ask questions. What can we do to do better? What can we do to cut these times down? Because when we go through and start going through the data, I'm constantly reading narratives and PCRs and everything like this, or patient care reports, and saying, hey, we can tweak this just a little bit. But everything that I've talked to them about, they've accepted, they've took off and run with, and they wanted to provide the best care. So we've got the best staff that I can go through and possibly praise, and I'm honored and humbled to be able to do part of their training, to be there for them and help to educate and be there in support of our staff. They do all the work, and whenever you see these guys out, if you just tell them thank you for what they go through and do, that means a lot to them. So, but thank you guys for letting us go through and be a representative of the county and to be able to get recognition like this to make us look good and make the county look good. But it's all about patient care and how we treat our patients. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you for all you do. Right, next, we got an update on the public utilities. Call on Mr. Lambert.
Board of Commissioners, thank you for giving me some time to update you on utilities. We are going to start out so currently utility projects that we have in progress are the water. We have the city-county water supply study, and I'll go through each one of these projects with some more detail as we go through here, and if you have any questions you can stop me or we can go through them at the end. The city-county water supply study, the water sewer master plan, the asset inventory and assessment, Peoples Creek Road water main extension. And we have some DOT projects that are in design and starting, as the proposed Farmington Road and Highway 158 roundabout, and then the US 601 North from Blaze Church Road to Cana Road. Those are water and the sewer right now. We got the Northeast Davie Sewer construction project and then the Jeffco pump station removal. So the city-county water supply study, this is a supply that the town of Moxville and Davie County entered into a joint agreement in November of 2018. This was to look at the city and the county's 20-year water supply needs. Hazen and Sawyer was retained to perform a feasibility study to determine how much additional water would be needed and to locate the most beneficial sources of getting this water. 95% of draft of the report has been submitted. The technical review team for the city and the county are looking this report over. We should be able to have something here in the near future to release to the board and to the managers. Once the study findings have been approved, we'll implement a schedule and will be developed. So the water sewer master plan, we've went through this and had this before, but we're going through and updating this water and sewer master plan. We're going to align this with the comprehensive plan and try to serve the projected growth areas along with maintaining the system. It's about 65% complete, and we're awaiting the completion of Davie County Comprehensive Plan. Final completion date will be determined once the comprehensive plan is finalized. Asset inventory and assessment grant. This was $150,000 awarded to us by the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. It's a study of all of our system assets and projected maintenance needs. We should be able to use this when it's completed to actually look at our CIP and develop cost and everything. This should be a great plan. We're about 40% complete, and we're scheduled to be completed in April 2020. This year, for our renewal and replacement, we did Peoples Creek Water Road main extension. This was 11,600 feet of 8-inch water main on Peoples Creek Road to tie in 2 dead-end lines. The design complete, all easements have been acquired, and the permitting is underway. The estimated cost for this is approximately $1 million. Again, we won't know the exact cost until bids go out. This was funded through the line extension and renewal program of $500,000 a year, so we used 2 years to fund this project. The DOT water main relocation. So DOT is proposing to construct a roundabout Farmington Road and Highway 158. So our water line currently runs through that intersection. DOT wants it out from underneath that roundabout, and we want it out from underneath that roundabout. So we're going to move that water line away from that roundabout, and we're going to try to upsize these water lines. Once we do that, so DOT is already going to pay to move these water lines, and for future growth, we know that if we can upsize these water lines and only pay the difference between the pipe sizes, then that saves the county a lot of money in the future. So we plan to do that at Farmington Road and Highway 158, and then also 601 from Blaze Church Road to Cana Road. As we all know, that's a growing area, and that right now that water main is underneath the edge of the road, and they want it out from underneath the road, and we want it out from underneath the road. So we'll do the same thing there. So again, we don't know these costs yet. We'll assess increasing the size and then to the cost, and hopefully avoid a lot of future costs in replacing these water mains. And then Northeast Davie construction project. As of course everybody, this is a $14 million project. It's currently under construction. It's on schedule. It's under budget right now. And we've had minimal change orders, so we're proud of that, and we'll keep moving forward with that. But the completion is fall for 2020. But I've got a little video here that was put together that we've asked for when we've done this project. We wanted to be able to give updates to the public and to the board, and I'm just going to play this real fast.
I'm Jeremy Allen, and this is Jake Lowe with Highfield Infrastructure, and we're here at the East Davie Transfer Pump Station. Construction started April 1st, so they've been underway for about two months. They've done majority of the grading site work here at the East Davie Transfer Pump Station, and they've started with the pipeline work across the river in Forsyth County. They started down at the Muddy Creek wastewater treatment plant, or near the wastewater treatment plant, and they're making their way back this way with the 20-inch force main. Pump station progress has been pretty good so far?
Yeah, they've just got the grading started, as you mentioned, and I think next week they're going to start the actual excavation of the wet well itself. They should be starting the clearing over at the Bermuda Run pump station within a week or two. things are getting started well with the both pump stations.
Coming up here shortly, I think they're going to start the bore underneath the river. Is that right?
Yes, sir. They said within 2 weeks they'll be starting the directional bore underneath the Yankton River.
And that typically takes, what, about a month from beginning to end?
Yeah, I would say for this bore, it will definitely take probably a month.
I understand Hall Contracting is going to add a second pipeline crew here in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, that is their plan. I think they're going to have it on site next week.
Okay. Okay, and then they'll be one cruise in Forsyth County, and then the second cruise going to start on the gravity sewer.
Yeah,
by
the Bermuda
by
Run
the golf course.
Golf course, yeah.
That's our update for right now. We'll plan to give you updates along the way, but for right now, we're going to give you a quick aerial shot of the pump station site just down the road.
So a lot of progress has been made. That video is a couple weeks old, and they have started. They've got the boring rig out. They haven't started to bore yet, but we look by the end of this week they'll start to bore. I spoke to the crew today. They're excited to get started. He tells me in a perfect world he'll be there 3 weeks. If not, he'll be there at least 30 days. So we'll see how that goes. We don't look for any major problems. We did geotechnical on each side of the river before we bid the project out, so they know when they're going to hit rock and what type of rock they're going to hit. So I think they'll get done, and they have got the hole dug for the lift station for the well at the Canancer property. So it's moving along very well. Jeffco pump station removal. This is another project that we've used money, our renewal and replacement money. This is to remove a problematic Jeffco lift station. This lift station was designed to smaller than what it's taking now. And since we installed this line underneath 40 from Baptist Hospital, we can gravity all that sewer down. This will save the county a lot of money on maintenance costs and pumps and electric bills and things like that. So the design has been complete. We're obtaining some easements now and also doing the permitting alongside this. We don't see any problems with the easements, but we're just waiting for some signatures. And we hope to finish it in spring of 2020. Some additional projects that we've got that was approved in the capital improvement plan last month was a SCADA system upgrade. We hope to begin that pretty quick. We've got to get some design work done on that. All of our new lift stations from the Eastern Davie site will be on the new SCADA system, and we'll phase this in over the next 3 years. SCADA is kind of the backbone of our system. That tells what, everything communicates together and gives us alarms and tells us when something's wrong. The relocation of the carbon feed system at Sparks Road, we talked about that a little bit last meeting, I think, with Brad, but this is more of a safety hazard. This is getting it away. Carbon in contact with water is a great thing, so the more contact time we can get with that carbon with the water, the better off we are. So we want to move it out of the plant away down towards a reservoir so we can get more contact time with it. Fire hydrant installations, they're only considered, we send a letter out annually to the fire departments. It's a request form. They request these and they send them back. They're sent out annually. In this current year, we've had 5 fire departments request an installation, and they're being assessed by the operations staff. So Andy gave me an update today, and he said all those fire hydrants that have been requested this year have already been installed. So that's good. Water and sewer rates. Another reminder, I think you've seen this last time, but we did the 5-year rate forecast with Raftellus, and then the 5-year forecast assumptions and current improved rates in 2020. I know this is a little difficult to see, but we're in 2020, so the 1920, so 2718, we still stayed on the same thing that Raftellus has asked, and that's the 2.25%. And it was very minimal increases. The state average, and state and federal average is at 4 to 6%, so we're way below that. And the smaller increases instead of lump increases is working out great. The board approved these financial policies to help guide future growth in Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. These policies are for predictability for the residents year to year, so no one's being hit with a 10% increase and not being aware of it. It allows for expansion of services and operations within the financial framework that we have, while also providing necessary services and maintain a minimal debt service coverage ratio. The county will maintain a minimum liquid balance for enterprise fund equal to 365 days. That enterprise fund right now is about 708 days, so we're well above that. Cash on hand represents unrestricted cash balances of the enterprise fund divided by the annual operating and maintenance expense divided by 365 is determined by the financial forecast. We'll continue to implement the annual increases as necessary with the goal of limiting any increase to maintain a maximum of 3% in any given year unless approved by the board. So if we have anything that we see in future years coming, it's going to be more than 3%. We'll definitely come back to the board. Current rates now is $26.59. That's $27.18 is the new rate. That will be effective July 1st. That's for water. The irrigation is $27.18. 3,000 gallons. You'll see that this is a little higher for irrigation, and the Columbia sewer goes from 404 per thousand to 413. The minimum bill going from 2454 to 2509. Eastern Davie sewer from 3436 minimum bill per thousand gallons to 3513, and then from 1181 per thousand to 1208. So we followed these staggered rate increases to avoid any large spikes. Service for the citizens, we want to stay below that state national average of 4 to 6%. We've seen some increases larger than that around the state this year. We want to stay well below that. So this budget includes the fee that was recommended by the consultant Raftellus to the board last year, as noted on the approved fee schedule, and includes an approved project escalation rate of 2.25%. Just a quick update to solid waste transfer station. We've updated several things out there. The road was in pretty bad shape, and some of the parking areas, they've actually went back and asphalted those and brought the areas and the roads back up to original grade. The old scale house is actually being remodeled, so they're going to get out of that smaller shed towards the dumping area and remodel that scale house so they have a drive-through experience. We only have people getting out one time, and that's the dump. The old and damaged dumpsters that were piled up around there, they've been removed from the site. They're also going to be moving in a commingled recycling compactor. So that will help with transfer a lot of this recycling out. They can use more. You learn new things every day, and this recycling is really light, and they can't get as much on a truck as they can the trash. So this helps them move it. They're going to do some new railing and some fencing for safety, and they're going to upgrade the signage to the facility this year. So we look excited to see that. That's That's it for this one. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Lambert?
The only thing I would say, Johnny, is that update on our website?
The video?
Appropriate or timely to put on?
I'm going to put it on, yes. We'll put this whole thing on there. I'll actually put the video on there, and so people will be able to see it. And it'll stay on the front page for maybe a couple days, and then it moves to that East Davie transfer station.
Thank you.
But the fee schedule's on there.
Yeah, fee schedule's already on there, yes. The fee schedule's on there. It will be sent out in the July bills.
Okay, any other questions?
I know that all the board has asked multiple times, where are we with these projects? So, Johnny, you can see tonight, he showed you, we're pretty busy right now. And I was out, well, last weekend and this weekend riding around, and his crews were out working all weekend dealing with some pretty significant leaks. So just want to thank them for what they do on the weekends, even when some of us may not even see that. But in addition to that, they come in every day, maintain our lines, but then also have to work on big projects like this. So there's a lot going on in our utilities department, and we're very blessed to have a leader like Johnny in that unit. So I just commend him. I remember when I first walked in the door, many of you said, we want to get these projects moving, and I think you can see tonight they're moving. That bore is pretty phenomenal from what I understand. So,
And I'll try to get some videos. I plan on doing some more of these flyovers and some more videos like this to put out on the website so everybody can see it. I know, I've had a lot of questions from the public, and they're like, can we go watch the bore? I don't think we can do that. I'm going to try to get them to make some videos, and he's even offered to come and explain what he's doing. And this is a pretty, the process to this is pretty neat. So there's a lot of data logging, there's a lot of blinds, so they're working off electronics, and I can tell you the bore rig is 52 foot long. So hopefully I can get some more pictures, and when we do another update, I can get Mr. Elder to send it out. We can get some more stuff on it. We're excited.
Not to put you on the spot, but the joint water study with the town, Moxville, and the county, I know we've had the meeting, and I know it's in technical review. Do we think we'll maybe?
Yeah, we're waiting on some final numbers to come back from some other municipalities and things like that, and we're looking through some water usage numbers that we have to dig down into to make sure that they're right on our usages at cooling and things like that. But I would say 2 weeks we should have a final report. I've spoken to Mr. Eller, and I think the town kind of wants to be involved, and I think we'll kind of put something together where everybody can see, if Mr. Eller thinks that's the right thing to do.
yeah, I think we're looking at August, September at the latest, and it would be great because it's been such a great partnership with the town of Moxville that, if appropriate, and the chairs agreed and both commissioners agreed to actually have a joint meeting among those two bodies to show the unity and the time involved and the partnership. And so I would imagine August, September, we'll be ready to do that.
Excellent exercise that needed to be done, in my opinion. So look forward to hearing about that.
Okay. Well, in that, I'll go ahead and so recycling is the next. Are you controlling? So recycling is the next thing we talk about. I know a lot of us are hearing about the commodity market and how it's how it's basically tanking out, and Davie County offers recycling to curbside recycling to every citizen, and that's taken up by the county. We don't charge the citizens anything for that, and there's been some changes, and Republic has come back to us and asked us, for some changes, and we've talked to Republic some, and we're still in the process of trying to figure out what to do and how to do it and how to phase this in, and they've been great to work with, and but Tony, I'm gonna slash his name here, is here to kind of give an update and run through some of this and try to explain it. And I was sitting with Mr. Eller today, and he said, you're going to confuse everybody. So if anybody has any questions, please let us know. And if you want him to stop, we'll stop, and we'll explain this. And we'll go through it, and if there's any questions, we'll try to answer.
You know, when we spoke today, Tony, thanks for being here. When we spoke today, commissioners, this is a very confusing topic, and I said to Johnny, you know, I want to make sure we can answer the questions. The good news is by the end of this presentation, these two partner so wells, they'll be able to go back and come up with a plan over the next 3 months. So don't feel like you have to, you know, make a decision tonight because it's going to be a little overwhelming. But we wanted Tony to be able to tell us what's happening in the market and what are other counties and municipalities experiencing. So thank you, Tony.
I have confidence that he would have got Krushenko correct. Happy to be here tonight. Thank you, commissioners, for the forum tonight. My name is Tony Krushenko. I'm the municipal sales manager for Republic Services, and I operate out of the Hickory, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, Troy, and a couple of divisions up in Virginia that I handle. So I've done this presentation just a few times, but I'm also a Davie County resident, so I get to speak with a little experience of what we have going on here. But wanted to talk to you a little bit tonight about recycling. And we had some brief conversations last year about it as things were changing in the market. If you've been to any conferences, recycling is the topic of almost every conference. Every one I've been to, it's a major point of discussion for all elected officials. So just to recap quickly, the China sword policy that came down from China about a year and a half ago, they changed what they were requiring recyclers to send them. We were sending them product with roughly 5% contamination in it. By modern recycling means, we should be able to get that down to about 3%. They said they wanted a 1.5% threshold, which commercially was going to be undoable. And then on top of that, they banned all mixed paper products from coming inbound into China. And that just created a lot of uncertainty in the market, and you know, mostly over on the West Coast, it was a significant problem. Areas of Oregon, Washington, where all of their product was going over to China. They actually had to landfill quite a bit of cardboard or mixed paper that just sat outside and just degraded. We were fortunate enough here. Most of ours goes domestic. We do send some product overseas from North Carolina, but nowhere near what the West Coast does. So what that's done, though, is the West Coast is now, because they can't send it overseas, they're sending it inward. So it has created a glut of material domestically. For instance, mixed paper. 2 years ago, we could sell that on the market for about $105 a ton. 6 months ago, we were paying $40 a ton to get rid of it. Now it was down to about zero as a break even. Now we're back to paying about $15 a ton to get rid of it. Problem with that is cardboard right now, the value of cardboard is so low that the paper mills would rather have a higher quality pulp from cardboard than they would from mixed paper. Paper's not a endless recyclable material. Each time it's recycled, it's degraded and has less value. So by the time it gets down to newspaper or egg cartons, it's almost unusable after that. So that's where the market's kind of been. So we've seen that glut, and it's depressed prices significantly. So this is kind of a then and now of recycling cost, and this is the kind of tricky part. And these are industry averages. So we would, you know, sell recycling. It costs us about $2 a month to pick it up. It was costing us about $60 a ton to process that material once it went to our recycling facility. And when we first did our programs, the material coming in was cleaner and it was heavier. For instance, a water bottle. 10 years ago, it took about 56,000 of those to make a ton. Today it takes 92,000. So everything's lighter, so we're processing more tonnage, which means we're actually processing twice as much material. to get that same ton. So that affects that cost. But before, we were selling that blended ton of recyclables for about $180 a ton. That $180 a ton subsidized or paid for the processing and also allowed for a lower cost on the collection. And then there was low contamination, and it's about $40 a ton at that time to dispose of contamination. So what does that kind of show you? The net position of each of those items, there was about a $3 deficit in the collection costs. So to promote recycling, we use the value of that commodity, and it subsidized the collection. So instead of that collection being $5 a month, it was only $2. So it left a negative $3 a month per household. Same thing with the processing. It was subsidized about $1.50 a month per household. But that commodity value, the $3.60 per month, that was the value of that ton. That paid for the additional collection costs and the processing. Little bit of cost for the residual at that time. So nationally, we were selling recycling for about $1.10 a month per household. And that isn't far from what Davie County was. When we started it in 2016, our automated program, $1.50 a household. So we were right around that national average. So where is it today? Currently, roughly we're charging $3 a home to pick it up. But the processing costs, because of the contamination, the lighter material, the amount of material, and the buyers now being more particular, we've had to add labor on the front end, picking out contamination, because China said they wanted 1.5%, and our domestic buyers said, well, you were going to supply them with 3% contamination. We want 3% contamination, or else we're not buying it. So we've seen that those processing costs more than double. And here's the real significant impact. That $180 a combined recycling ton that used to be worth $180, at this time it was averaged around $80. Right now it's averaging around $55. So it's even lower than when we first put this together. Residual, it went from about 10% when we first started programs. Now they're more around 30%. Some of that is changing material. Some of that is laziness on consumer part and lack of education on our part. When we were getting $180 a ton for the material, we weren't as worried about contamination because it was still paying for itself. There was still a margin to be made, and we didn't have to come back for large increases. That dynamic has changed. So what does that mean? Net position is we're subsidizing collection about $4 a month, processing $2.75. That commodity value's only worth $1.25 a month, 50 cents a household for residual. So your average price for recycling is around $6 per month per household, and that's fairly in line. And it depends all that on your demographics, your makeup, your dynamic, how the contract's set up. Davie County is set up very well. It's a summary bill. We don't have to send out individual bills, so we know when we're driving past a household and it has a container out there, we don't have to look and see if they're on a service interrupt. We don't have to, have a collections department that's trying to collect the bill, so it's a lower cost. For instance, Forsyth County, there was residential recycling in the unincorporated areas, $6 a month. We just updated our pricing in Guilford. It's about $6.50 a month. Now, those are all subscriptions, so there's collection costs and everything in there, but the dynamic of it is essentially the same. Alamance County is $11 a month, but definitely more sparse. And theirs is a la carte, so it's not required. Each customer doesn't get that, so we could drive 1.5 miles in between stops.
Tony, could I ask you a brief question?
Sure.
When was then?
Then was about 2 years ago.
So the data changed, so you've compiled this data just over a 2-year period.
Correct.
Okay.
And some of this we thought we were going to see some market correction. China still needs this product. Buyers still need this product. So there's a little bit of market influencing, I think, by China, because they're still the beneficiary. A lot of the West Coast material is going to Malaysia, India, Vietnam, Korea, where it's being processed into plastic flake, paper fiber, and then China's importing basically raw material back into China to make our TVs, our, all our disposable things that we buy every day as consumers. But they're getting it now at a significantly reduced price.
And quick question, how, the contract that we're currently under then, when was that contract signed and when does that contract end?
That was, we redid it on the First Amendment to go to the automated in 2016, and that agreement runs through 2023.
Okay, so any changes you're talking about here are not until after 2023?
Well, potentially, and that's one of the things we wanted to talk to you about, because as somebody that's, been through municipal and budgets and things, you can eat that elephant all at one time, or you can eat it several bites at a time.
You'll probably get to that.
We will.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
But just, does everybody kind of understand that dynamic of, it's basically these 4 items that affect the pricing of recycling. Collection costs, we can control. Once we know the cost, the time of the route, we're able to fix those costs. Processing, they're more static, unless there's changes in requirements or materials that come in. Commodity value, we have 0 control over, just like the price of gas. Why did gas go up 30 cents a gallon 2 weeks ago? Because it could. But we all suffer at the pump for it. And then 2 weeks from now, it'll drop 30 cents to make us feel better about going to the gas station. And then residual is a controllable item, but it takes a lot of education and re-education to our customers and the public of what's recyclable and what isn't. We've gotten into a culture of a lot of wishful recycling. People are adamant about it. We have trained 3rd graders extremely well. They have gone home and they have beat their parents into submission, and now we're into that culture where this is our opportunity to do something for the environment that means something. But sometimes we get a little too wishful with it. We're putting in the plastic films, the grocery bags. I've got videos where we have bowling balls, ceiling fans, satellite dishes. We've ended up with hand grenades, loaded guns, you name it. Everybody tries to recycle something that common sense would tell you shouldn't be there, but it ends up in our recycle facility. But we're trying to, keep things simple and easy for people, to teach them how to recycle the right way, give us a better product so it controls costs and gives us a higher end product at the end. And in the end, what the time they've taken to recycle is rewarded by that product being actually reused. So this is how we came up with the durable recycling model. Rather than chasing the market, trying to figure things out, is, again, that collection cost plus the processing fee, disposal of residual, less the commodity sale, gives you that cost of recycling. Again, residual, we can control, we can influence that. That's something that will lower costs. The only thing that really isn't, manageable or in our control is the commodity value. And that gives you a net processing fee. And that's what we'll be talking a little bit about tonight here. On the public education, we've really stepped up our game. Sometimes I'm a little skeptical about sometimes when they roll stuff out, even from our own company, that it doesn't talk to consumers how it reacts to them. they've actually done a pretty good job this time. I was actually impressed with it. RecyclingSimplified.com has an amazing amount of resources in it. We've really put forward a national push on this. Republic Services has been on almost all of the national networks. When they're talking about recycling, 9 out of 10 times we're the resource that the media outlets are coming to see how we're doing it, how we're explaining it, and the education we're putting before the public. So all of these items on our website are free for all of our municipal customers, and honestly even our non-municipal customers to cities to use. On their website there's videos, there's print material, there's emails, and we're doing this along with our educational program where we're doing community events. Town by town, we're trying to do recycling education, little town hall meetings, as well as your social, your Twitter and Facebook, to be able to link to some of these, just to get bits and pieces out there. So people, one of the great things is you actually see how a recycle facility works, so it helps people to understand why you can't send a water bottle half full of water to the recycling facility, or a mayonnaise jar that still has mayonnaise in it, why it doesn't work that way, and why it becomes trash if it still has food residue in it. So there's a lot of great resources there, and we'll be rolling those out and helping get that information out to the public more. Another is reassessment of the accepted materials. We've kind of drifted on the focus of diversion rates. Every year we have to provide tonnage reports to the municipalities so they can provide it to DEQ. So we've been focused on that ton. But recycling is really focused from tonnage to volume, because everybody's tonnage continues to rise because the programs are more robust. But from a recycling end, we are processing 1 to 2 times, 1.5 to 2.5 times more material for that same ton, because of light weighting. And there's items that we're currently recycling that have zero value or negative value. Glass is a perfect example. It's a great product. It can be recycled endlessly, but it has a negative value. This has a negative $10 value in it. Right now, glass is actually a negative $27. So for every ton of glass that gets sent to our facility, we run it through our process for $125 a ton, and then it costs us $27 a ton to get rid of it. And there's less demand for that product. We now have to transport it further to have it recycled because there's not as many glass recycling facilities. We're a little fortunate here where we have strategic materials within the state that uses it, but there's less demand and less call for glass. And honestly, if we didn't have wine and beer bottles, we probably wouldn't have glass at all in the commodity system. But there's still people like me that are beer snobs, and I have to drink my beer out of a bottle. Except at the pool, I have to take a can. So that's one thing that a lot of cities are looking at removing out of their waste stream. City of Greensboro just took glass out of their system, and what that does is that negative $27 comes off of that commodity value. So that negative 27 now goes to a zero, and it takes the value of their ton and increases that value and lowers their cost. So overall, it becomes a cost savings. And in the end, if I had a choice of a plastic water bottle or a glass bottle going into the landfill, that glass bottle came from the earth as sand. It's inert. It's not going to have any effect in a landfill. That plastic bottle is going to be there 500 years, breaking down with leachate, and who knows what that plastic eventually leachates out into over 500 years. So we're looking at everything that's in the recycle stream. We're currently not removing anything out of it yet, but there's things like plastics 3 through 7 that have zero value, and we still get a lot of that in our recycle facility. Your yogurt cups, small plastic parts and toys, to-go boxes that come into the facility. They're usually number 5 polypropylene that just don't have any value in the system right now. So the key topics going forward was to evaluate the recyclables, best benefit to the planet, consider a better matrix to track the success, the volume rather than the tonnage, or be able to put a formula to it so that you understand that you're actually seeing an increase in recycling even though your tonnage may be static. Increase the public education, and update the business model. 2 services are provided in a recycling program, the collection and the processing, and not have them be dependent on commodity value to subsidize the cost of that. So remove some of that risk. So what we've talked about is a new model for recycle processing. And when we ran numbers for Davie County, based on the tonnage collected and the makeup of the commodity stream, and the next slide will break this down a little more for you, and show how the value of that material will affect that processing cost. And try and maybe phase that in over 4 years, 25% a year. Again, eating that elephant one bite at a time, because there's nothing worse than showing up at the gas pump today and it's $3.50 a gallon, showing up tomorrow or at the end of a contract saying, oh, by the way, it's $6 now. You need to be able to plan for it. At least that's what I've been able to see, is that if you know it's coming and you can plan for it, or at least phase that in, it becomes more tolerable. The other is consider an updated CPI index. Currently, you're on a garbage trash index, and it's connected to the month of February only. What we've seen, and we've got a slide for that, is just some drastic fluctuations in that CPI index. It's not very stable. Our costs for collection, everything, pretty much go up 3.5% every year between health insurance, wages, fuel, that just naturally go up with any budget. You'll see that every year. So we've been trying to suggest shifting to a water, sewer, trash, or a flat rate of 3.5%, just to keep with those costs. So when a renewal does come along, it's one of those where it's a paperwork renewal. It's not having to rework pricing because the CPI index didn't keep up with the cost of doing business, and there's a dramatic shift in pricing. And also discuss the adjustment in collection costs. Davie County was right there in that $1.50, so that commodity value, you subsidize that collection. I think that's a little further discussion down the road. Again, we'd like to see something with that where we can phase that in so that when 2023 comes around, we're having, a different discussion. We're talking about how to improve the program, not, here's this big lump of an increase that you have to deal with at the end of a term if you want to continue recycling program in Davie County. So what this model's based on is we collect approximately 260 tons of recycling a month. And if you divide that amongst the number of customers we serve, take that at the $125 processing cost, and the boxed in area, you'll see some of the yellow highlighted numbers. 75% of what we collect is able to be recovered and sold. The other 25% is residual and trash. That's a number that we can, through education, start to control. And as that 25% goes lower, the tons sold increase. So the value of your ton will increase for every ton of residual you can get rid of. So we credit this new model. We credit 100% of all the commodity value against the processing cost. And what that does is it de-risks the processing on our part, but it also removes a lot of the liability for both of us. If commodity values go up over a year, your processing costs go down. So shared risk, shared reward. If it goes down, your price goes up. So we remove the unknown from both of us and agree to share in that. We're going to give you 100% of the value of that ton, If the value of the ton ever exceeds the recycle processing rate, we split that 50-50. So again, that takes your processing cost to zero, and then you then start to subsidize that collection. It lowers your price even more.
What if you see further erosion in the market of the residual? Do we eat that too?
If that residual continues to climb, it would devalue that ton of recyclables. So yeah, it would increase costs. So I always say there's
There's
an
no floor
incentive.
in it. I mean, it's totally variable. There's no floor.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And if it climbs above 30%, I mean, that's when you really have to start to look at your program and see, because then there's some structural critical problems wrong with the system. We've seen that in the larger cities where it's more of a transient population, and the recycle bin basically becomes the trash overflow. I don't think we're at that point in Davie County. I think ours is more of educating people of what's recyclable and getting away from wishful recycling. Because we do still see the occasional ceiling fan in the recycle bin. Big thing now is people still love to bag up their recyclables and put it in the recycle container. You put it in a bag and put it in your recycle can, it's going as trash. We can't remove it from the bag at the facility. So that's our biggest fight right now, is getting people to not bag items, keep them separate. People love to put other items inside of other items. Leave them loose, crush your milk containers, crush your water bottles, but leave it loose, leave it empty, leave it clean, leave it dry. So that $1.04 per month net processing rate, that's what becomes variable year over year. So 12 months after an implementation, when it comes due again, we do a 12-month look back at the material value. If that material value goes up, that $1.04 drops by that same amount. So right now, we're pretty much at the bottom of the market on recyclables. I don't want to say it can't go any further, because I didn't think cardboard would be at $35 a ton. But pretty much at $35 a ton, it doesn't have a whole lot of value. 2 years ago, cardboard was at $180 a ton. So it is kind of every movement is up from here.
So to clarify, that $1.04 is per household, and that is just for your processing. It doesn't have anything to do with collections.
Right.
Or anything to do with the other fees. We'll go through that.
So this is the garbage trash index that I was referring to before. The yellow is the trend that you've been going at before. You saw in 2016 it was 2.11, 2017 2.15, 2018 1.61. Those are pretty low CPI indexes. Well, in 2018 there was a correction. It was 4.96, which is bad, but I've also had to have that conversation with communities that were tied to a November index and saw a 7.23% increase last November. That's difficult to budget for. That's where, if you look at that flat 3.5%, or this is the water sewer trash index. This is based on municipally owned and operated utilities, so they tend to stay more static, not as influenced by the economy of the market. Towns and counties, for the most part, cost controls are better than the private industry, sometimes less reactive to the economies. You see the 12-month average that are highlighted, they're all pretty much right around 3.5%. Varies a little bit, somewhere between 3.29 was a low and 4.37 was a high back in 2016. But they stay relatively in that area. You don't see a whole lot of fluctuation. And of course, then there's just a 3.5% flat. And if you look at the rate analysis under the garbage trash index, in 2019, the rate's $1.63 for recycling. If it would have been under a water sewer trash index, it would have been $1.65. Under a 3.5% flat rate, would have been $1.65. So you relatively end up in the same spot. It just keeps it more evenly passed out, rather than that large influx, that large increase at one time because of a market correction. Again, I'd rather budget for a known than, having to worry about whether it's a downturn in the economy, so it's going to be less. It's an upturn in the economy, it's going to be a higher, because our tax revenues don't flow that same way. They're fairly static. And then the other part is that collection cost. Right now, our rate is $1.63. If for the customer base this size in the density of the county, it's probably somewhere between that $4.50 range that you would see for cost of a recycling program. If you were to say we were going to start a new program today, you'd probably see it somewhere around $4.50. So you can see where that, 2 years ago it was $1.10, $1.50, and now you'll see it more where it's $4.50, $5 per household per month. So what we'd like to do is, work with the county to find a durable process going forward, find a way to phase that in. I think it brings a lot of value to Davie County. I know from reading on Nextdoor and the HOA website and Facebook, people are adamant about recycling. Even towns, I just finished up a contract with town of Sawmills, went through the same scenario. They decided they were going to discontinue their recycling program. We sent out the notices, told customers when we'd be picking up our containers. A week and a half later, the town called and said, we've reconsidered. We want to reinstate the recycle program, and just so happened in Sawmills, we privatized their trash collection as well. So they saw where removing the service creates a couple of other things. Most people wouldn't be able to survive on one trash can anymore if you take away recycling, so it increased their trash costs. So there's really not a savings overall for the consumer, and it takes away something that they value. That's their small opportunity to affect the environment. It's their small part. So happy to answer any questions.
But Tony, if you educate them then and they take those items that they're placing in the recycle bin, and you want them out of the recycle bin and they have to move them back in the trash container anyway, they may have to expand the number of trash containers they have anyway, right?
If you decide to...
You don't want the recycling to be an overflow of their trash can, right?
Right. For instance, I live in Kinderton Village. I will see recycle containers this week overflowing, but you pick up their trash can and it's half full. Most people are adamant about they're shifting that. They could still recycle properly and still get by with a 96 gallon. I mean, I've got a teenage daughter, and that comes with about 4 other teenagers on any given day with it. So I kind of generate a lot of trash, but I also find myself picking recyclables out of my trash and putting them in the recycle container. So it's manageable. But also as consumers and manufacturers are becoming more conscious of the packaging they're providing. I mean, everything we buy, comes in a plastic wrapper, in a cardboard box, wrapped in another plastic wrapper, and then it's shipped in a plastic container inside a cardboard box. We package the heck out of stuff. Amazon is shifting from cardboard boxes to bubble wrap packaging. Bubble wrap packaging is not recyclable, but we end up with a lot of it in the recycle can. And Amazon's talking about changing back to their cardboard because they've got a lot of backlash from their consumers as well. So we're seeing that more and more with every item that we deal with on a daily basis.
Okay, so your overall ask is, we have a contract through 2023, but that's really not working out, and you're losing money. So your ask is for us to consider these alternatives and make them retroactive to July 1.
We'd want to make them on a go forward. I mean, we understand the process as well. We're not asking to go backwards. We're saying let's find a path forward, and we'll go down that path together at that time. You know, the sooner we can implement things, the less painful it is further down the road. We can spread the pain out over time, or it all comes to bear in 2023.
But the cost in 2023 is whatever the cost is in 2023. You're not backdating the process to backload the cost at 2023. So am I wrong here? Whatever the cost is at the end of your contract is what the cost is. So going to some fee now up until that point is not going to eliminate whatever the cost is in 2023. It is what it is, right?
Correct. But just like any other business, the longer duration you have losses, you have to make it up on futures. So it comes home to roost either way. And we're seeing that with, you know, we just redid it with the city of Greensboro. We were paying them $15 a ton for every ton of recyclables they sent us. We were losing $750,000 a year with their contract. Their contract was a couple years out of duration, and you know, we were just frank with them. You know, we were going to shutter that facility because you just can't operate that way. You can't just take $750,000 and throw it out the door. So it was finding a durable solution going forward. So again, they're doing a phased-in approach on a much larger scale.
Do they charge the consumer? Is that passed on to the consumer? Or
Yes and no. Like a lot of municipalities, they don't actually charge what the program actually costs them. They charge a reduced fee.
but they do charge.
They do charge.
Supplement the cost.
Yeah.
And that's something the county, we don't charge anyone in this county anything for our recycling program. We're one of maybe 2 or 3 counties in the whole state that doesn't charge anything for a recycling program.
Us and Orange.
Yes.
But is then the potential? Is there potential to rebid the recycle part of this with other companies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, in 2023, when the contract's over, we could, or if something happened and we need to rebid now, yes, we could rebid.
Okay.
Rebid the recycling.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the only cautionary tale is there, and DEQ is doing a capacity study right now, because Sunoco Recycling has shuttered about 4 of their plants in North Carolina because they couldn't make any money at it. So right now, there is more demand for tonnage than there's recycling capacity. So we're kind of fortunate here where we have the Conover plant. The town of Cary was looking at bringing their recyclables all the way over to Greensboro at a cost of about $150 a ton because they didn't have an outlet. They had nowhere to take it. And to the town of Cary, shutting down their recycle program was not an option. And what happened was another facility ended up kicking 2 of their customers out that were not under contract to take to the town of Cary. Well, I now have those 2 customers under contract going to my Greensboro facility. So they played a shell game. And in the end, these 2 customers ended up paying a market rate, and the town of Cary ended up having somewhere to take theirs.
I'm sorry, y'all go ahead. I mean, it seems to me, if we're talking, you signed a contract in 2016, we're at 2019. I mean, is what you're saying is the market's collapsed? I mean, because at the point we get to the 2023 contract renewal, what happens if the market corrects itself?
Well, under the scenario, if those commodity values rise up, your price falls at the same rate. you get the benefit of a de-risked program, just like we get the value of, you know, if it falls any further, we remove some of that risk. But if it goes up, we share in the reward.
But the reward would be, it would only benefit us, our only upside would be if it got above 180, because that's the then assumption that was inherent in your model. So,
Or above the 125, then it goes back to even, because the processing rate is $125 a ton.
you're at 55 now.
I think in the model, it's about $55, I think.
Well, it's 80 in the model, but you said it had eroded at 55, I thought.
Yeah. What we've presented is the model when Johnny and I first started talking. It was the blended ton is at 51.27, and we would honor that. It's lower than it is right now, but then again, you know, in 12 months, it does a 12-month look back and gives you an actual breakdown of what that commodity value is over that 12-month period. So your rate isn't fluctuating month to month.
Is another option so we talked about, we have an option to rebid, and Tony's spoken to that. Another option to wait until the contract expires. And then what about a third option to make recycling voluntary to customer, and then pass along the cost to the customer, and that would allow the market to determine where you go.
This isn't a mandated program, so that's an option.
There's several options that we can do. That's one of them. There's also a phased-in approach that, you know, we can try to absorb this cost for another year if that's a choice that the board makes, that they want the consumers to start taking more of this cost over. So, you know, we could try to absorb this cost for a year to give them that chance to do that. I mean, there's some options for us.
I think, Commissioner Jones, what we appreciate about Tony is he hasn't issued an ultimatum to us. He said, let's talk about this. And you heard they're not looking for retroactiveness. So I think what staff would like to do, if it's the pleasure of the board, is to allow Johnny and Tony to consult, and we'll be part of that process over the next 2 or 3 months and come back with several options, pros and cons for each option, for you to make an informed decision and maybe present an option we hadn't thought about. But we'll give you multiple options. That's what we want to do. We wanted to educate you tonight because during the budget process, you remember we've told you, Republicans have been clear, the model we have is unsustainable.
So given the current model, Mr. Kushenko, what is the projected loss on our recycling program for Davie County for 6/30/2020?
We're about $3 per household per month off of what market rate is.
In the previous annual, it was $2. Tell me when the last time it was profitable.
2 years ago, when the value of that commodity
2 years ago.
would pay for the processing and subsidize the collection as well.
Yeah. And that's when it was at 180, but when you get to 125, it's break even.
Right. And it's a little more complex than that, but again, it's a matter of
Round numbers.
it takes a little bit of time to run through them.
Right. Okay.
I'm happy to do that, but you would start throwing things at me.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? That's a lot to digest.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Okay, moving right along, we have a couple resolutions. First is some disposition of some real property in Rowan County. I'll call on Mr. Eller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll begin by talking about these in totality, and I'll defer to Mr. Vogler to fill in the gaps here for me. About 2.5 years ago, we started having a conversation with the town of Coolmee as well as some property owners on the South Yadkin River near the old mill. And I can't even tell you here tonight in a few minutes how many hours we've spent on this project. So I want to thank the town of Coolmee and Mr. Courier's here tonight representing them. And they've been great partners, and our landowners have as well. I'm pleased tonight to announce we finally have obtained the necessary deeds, easements, and right of first refusals needed to proceed with potential future uses and brainstorming possibilities in conjunction with our River Park Advisory Board. We don't have all those pieces figured out, but we haven't even been able to get to that point until we obtain the necessary pieces needed to begin talking with potential folks who might be interested in sharing a vision for that site. So with that, I want to express my excitement for this being on the agenda tonight, but also defer to Mr. Vogler to talk about exactly what is before you as it relates to the legal steps that are necessary to move us forward.
And as John indicated, it has been a moving target, to say the least. But in any event, we have come to an agreement whereby we can grant to Roger Spillman an easement on the Rowan County side of our property in exchange for an easement across his property on the Davie County side, wherein would then be a right of way across his property from the main street over to the river park itself, and also through the development of the properties that are DFIs looking at possibly assisting in the development of some properties for various property owners. In order to do so, we would need to declare the 20-foot easement on the Rowan County side as surplus property, which you have a motion to do that tonight. We would also have to then look at disposing of that 20-foot easement. We would still own the land, but we would dispose of an easement, which is a property right. And in order to dispose of property rights in North Carolina, you have basically 3 different ways of doing that. One way of which is an exchange of property for other property, wherein the county receives at least the fair market value of their easement in the other property, and before it can be exchanged. So if you voted to go ahead and declare this property, this 20-foot easement, as surplus property, and then you also voted to, by a second motion, to allow the staff to move forward with having an appraisals done on the 2 easements, making certain that the easement that we gave up was not of a greater value than the easement which we received, then we could move forward with the transfers. Now, there's some legal requirements that even after you have your appraisals done, you still have to advertise them in the paper and allow a certain length of time so that the public can come in and say, whoa, wait a minute, I'm willing to give you that for it. But in any event, once you have got all of that completed and all the legal requirements completed, then we could go ahead and do the transfers of the deeds and move forward. So that's in a very hopefully succinct nutshell what we're looking at tonight.
Okay. Anybody got any questions? Everybody understand what we're talking about here? This has been a ton of work that has went into this. So I am very excited that we are here this evening with this opportunity.
And then, so we just need to make the motion on the first resolution.
First resolution, then the second resolution to pass each one of those.
Separately, yeah.
And I say that you shouldn't do it together simply because our Supreme Court it has strictly construed that you have to have it declared surplus property first before you do anything else.
Mr. Chairman, I make that motion.
Okay.
On Proclamation #1 declaring surplus.
Okay. Have a motion, do I have a second? Have a motion by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Finney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. That passes 5-0. Thank you. Then we would entertain a second motion on allowing the staff to go forward on making the requisite steps to get the appraisals to move forward.
And to dispose of the property if those appraisals come back.
Right.
Moved.
Motion by Ms. Finney, a second by Mr. Blakely. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, that is approved, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, next we have a Recreation and Parks proclamation, and Mr. Eller.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank our Recreation and Parks Department. Amanda Akers here tonight. We just had a great celebration over the weekend. I hear Rich Park was a very busy place over the weekend, and thank our Recreation and Parks staff and our advisory committee for all the work they do. I want to read this proclamation, and I'll present it to Amanda as she's patiently waited tonight. Whereas Recreation and Parks programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including Davie County, and whereas our recreation and parks are vitally important to establish and maintain the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region. And recreation and parks programs build and enrich healthy, active communities and improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas recreation and parks increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of local programs, increased tourism, and the attraction and retention of business and crime reduction. And our natural recreation and parks areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas the County of Davie also recognizes the benefits derived from recreation and parks resources, and now therefore do here proclaim this month, July 2019, as the National Parks and Recreation Month. So, man, if you'll come up, I'll present this to you, and let's give our recreation staff a great round of applause.
All right. Our Parks and Recreation Department are doing a great job and got a lot of exciting projects going on, so we appreciate what they're doing. Next, we have a public hearing. I'll call on Mr. Meadwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board. Tonight before you, you have zoning map amendment 08-19. This is a request by Daniel Solar LLC to rezone approximately 65-acre tract from residential agricultural to special purpose. Subject property is located along Daniel Road and is further described as Davie County Tax Parcel L44306. Included in your agenda package, you'll see a zoning map of the area, which identifies the subject site as well as the area in around it as zone RA. There's an aerial photograph of the property as well, which shows the piece of property is being used for agricultural purposes. The Davie County Land Development Plan identifies this area as industrial, and it's identified on the Davie County Growth Enhancement Strategy as a rural growth area. If the board recalls, we've had several of these requests over the past couple years. The special purpose district, that is a district that is established for those type uses that may have a greater impact on those surrounding pieces of properties. But with that, there are certain design criteria that you have to have or meet as part of to rezone to this district. One being lot size, additional setbacks, things of that nature. But probably the biggest requirement is that the applicant has to have that community meeting, which the applicant did do that on May 21st. They held this at the Moxville Public Library, which I think this is all included in your agenda packages on that. The issues to consider, although the applicant has identified that they are requesting or showing that they are wanting to propose a solar facility. As a general use rezoning, the board should consider all those uses that are allowed within that zoning district. But what the board should consider also is, the property's potential for residential purposes, commercial purposes, any type project, if approved, would still need to be submitted through our TRC process to review site plans and compliance with all of our applicable codes. The planning board heard this at its June 25th meeting and voted unanimously to approve. So, include your package or the actions needed for the board to make a recommendation on this. So I'll be more than glad to answer any questions that the board may have regarding this.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Meadwell?
Just real quickly, and this may not be appropriate for but the owner of the property is Daniel, right? Are they the owner of the solar facility too? Or the solar panel?
No, the property owner is the Angel Revocable Living Trust. Daniel Solar LLC, I guess it's a subsidy of Cypress.
Okay.
I think that's correct.
Okay.
All right.
Chair has announced this is the day and hour of the public hearing pursuant to Chapter 153A of the North Carolina General Statutes and pursuant to Section 153.251 of the Davie County Code and Ordinance. This board is conducting a public hearing on Daniel Solar LLC's request to rezone 68.05 acre tract of land from residential agricultural special use. Property is located off 570 Daniel Road and described as tax parcel L44306. There has been due publication of notice of the public hearing in the newspaper with a general circulation in Davie County is required, and the clerk to the board has attached the affidavit showing publication in said paper on a date at least 10 days prior to the day's hearing. I would ask each one who wishes to speak at this public hearing to come forward to the podium, state your full name, and then make any comments as to this proposal.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Board. My name is Mike Fox. I'm an attorney here representing Cypress Creek tonight, and my address is 100 North Green Street in Greensboro, North Carolina. I do have some materials, if I could, Mr. Chairman, get passed around. You've had a busy agenda tonight, I know, and you've still got other business, so I'll be brief. I also know that your board has heard and considered solar before, so we'll try to be respectful of your time. Here with me tonight, I have three folks who are available for questions. If anybody has any, I'll identify them and let you know, what their area of expertise is. First, I have Shane Shields. Shane is sitting right here. Shane is with Cypress Creek, and to answer Mr. Jones' question, Daniel Solar is a subsidiary of Cypress Creek. Typically, for these type projects, they're all in an individual LLC for different permitting processes. Shane can talk about Cypress Creek. He can talk about this particular site plan. Shane has been the point person for the community. He attended the community meeting and has been meeting with the neighbors to address concerns as they may have. As a result of that, we've added some buffering to the project. And so if you have questions about that, Shane will be happy to answer those. Also, besides Shane is Chris Sandifer. Chris is a independent engineer. He's licensed in North Carolina as well as multiple states. He's had a long career in the energy field. He was a former Duke Energy employee, and Chris is an expert in solar energy, how it works, the mechanics of it. Chris also sits on the planning board in Nash County, and Chris has solar on his own farmland in Nash County. So he's here to talk about the safety or how solar works if the board has any questions for that. Finally, I have Rich Kirkland, and Rich is the author of the report that I just handed to you. Rich is a MAI licensed and certified appraiser here in North Carolina. We've asked Rich to do a study of this particular site with the main question, would the installation and operation of a solar farm such as is planned here have any negative impact on any of the surrounding property owners, value of their property? Rich has studied that and has concluded that it would not have a negative impact. To briefly summarize the way Rich's study goes, he looks for matched pairs, which is, where can you find a home that was there before a solar farm, and what did it sell for versus a home that was there with a solar farm. Are they similar type homes? Was there any difference? And he takes into account any type of market valuations or anything unusual about the market. Rich has studied hundreds of particular solar sites, not only in North Carolina but in other states, to form the basis of his opinion. So he's here to talk about not only the impact on property value, but he can also talk about harmony of use in terms of where do you find solar farms typically in North Carolina in areas like this, and he can talk about that, and he can tell you that typically you see them in rural areas which are growing to some degree. That's where there's the type of power lines that are needed to conduct the power from the solar farm to the grid. But yet there's also enough land that you're able to have a facility of this type. So, and Rich's opinion is that this is a typical setting for a solar farm of this type. We appreciate working with your staff. They've been very helpful in helping us through this process. We would ask you to approve this. We do feel that it meets the criteria of your ordinance and that it is consistent with the land development plan and also the growth enhancement strategy, and that this uses and this zoning change is reasonable and in the public interest. Solar energy is beneficial to the public because it provides an alternative form of energy. It doesn't really have the downsides of a lot of things. There's no noise, no odor. It only operates during the day. There's not much traffic at all, only during the construction phase. And then after that, just limited maintenance. And it provides the benefit of building a more resilient power grid because we're not just relying on one source of power. So we do feel that this meets the criteria that you've set forth in your county ordinance. That's all the presentation I have. I can have the other individuals come up if necessary, or perhaps if you'd like to see if there's any public questions or other opinion, they can come up to answer those questions. So however, pleasure of your board.
You also mentioned that you added some extra buffering for visual aid.
Yes.
Can you explain where that buffering is, please?
If I could I get Shane to come up and he can identify for you specifically on the site plan and talk about how that came about.
All right, board, thank you. Yeah, per the Davie County ordinance, the solar farms are only stipulated to have vegetative buffering on the side and rear lot lines, which in this situation would leave Daniel Road without any sort of recommended vegetative buffering. And so that's one of the comments we heard at the public hearing, was that it would be nice to have the vegetative buffer located along the frontage there on Daniel Road. And that's something we've been happy to commit to.
Any other questions for the?
How long's the lease?
It's typically an initial 20-year term with 4 renewal extensions possible. I think that's how this is set up.
And they'll supply the bond. Yeah.
Once, when we go through a TRC, they still have to throw out all the decommissioning plan and all those things.
Okay, specifically.
Yes.
Okay.
For this project. You're just seeing the rezone.
Got it.
Not the
Okay.
site.
You may have some other questions, but I think we're good for now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else who wishes to comment, please come forward and state your name. Podium, please.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. My name is Marjorie Daniel Foster. I live at, my address is 500 Daniel Road. I live in the upper left corner in the red roof, as you see, with the green field around it, obviously directly across from this. This part of the farm, when I say farm, I mean my Goshen Lands, my family farm. My mother lives next door in the house just below at 570. This field was part of our farm since 1794, when we were granted this, my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. It was actually, when my father died in 79, it was actually deeded to my oldest brothers and sisters, who then ended up selling it to Madison Angel, who was our farmer for the last 40 years on the farm, and that's how he ended up with it. And now that he's deceased, his children have it. And obviously looking for a way to make money. But it does adjoin our farm that we own. If you look at a bigger picture of the area, which you may have, I'm not sure what you have, the 500 acres that basically surrounds this, at least on the left side, or I don't know how this is oriented of this, but that surrounds this particular farm. The concerns that we have as a family, I have 3 brothers and sisters and my mother that all live within sight of this, is the visibility was our first concern. That the original proposal came in with a vegetative buffer, I'm assuming on the outside of the fence that blocks the fence, which was crazy. I know it was by the board, but you know, we were the ones that said, hey, we don't want to look at this. No one wants to see a solar farm when you see nothing but farm land everywhere else. So I don't know what their what that really means. I think it said 20-foot wide vegetative buffer. I don't really, you know, will that completely hide the fence? Is it going to be little bushes that take 20 years to grow? I don't know what they do there. But the concern also is and I'm sure your board is well aware, but there are 4 solar farms, 5, touching my property at this rate. We're surrounded on all sides. I know every time we see something, I will preface this by saying I sell real estate in Davie County. I'm a realtor. We see constantly that they say there's 2 solar farms in Davie County. Well, I don't know where the news or wherever's getting their information from, but I can point out where they are, and trust me, they're way more than that. The big one on Crawford touches us. That farm is not visible from the naked eye. You have to travel down Crawford Road off of Nolly. Same thing with the one that's actually you can see on Daniel when you come in. It's kind of down a hill on Michael's property there. It doesn't provide, it's not very disturbing. You really can't, you have to look for it to notice it. The one on, the massive one that's going in on Tatum and Lowry Farm, that is in the process of going in, I don't believe you'll be able to see that one either from 601. But this one is going to be in your face. I mean, everybody that travels Daniel Road, and there are a lot. It is a shortcut from Coolamy to get to Moxville. So our main concern was that buffering zone, what this is going to do to our, you know, real value. I know we have appraisals that say, oh, it doesn't have any effect. I sell real estate. I talk to the people that walk up to us and say, I'm not living beside a solar farm, just like they don't live beside a dairy farm. They don't, because they have this, or I don't want to put natural gas in my home because I'm afraid it's going to explode. There are all sorts of mindsets that people have, whether they may be true or they may not be true. They still possess those mindsets. That they don't want to wake up in the morning instead of looking out to what we currently see and see, you know, a solar farm. Now, would I rather have a solar farm than a bunch of little houses? Yeah, I would, actually, honestly. As long as it's done well and it's completely screened from what we are, I'm going to assume there's not much we can do about it. But, you know, I think the county needs to make sure they're aware of how many of these things are popping up everywhere. And we seem to be the one that have gotten them all. It's literally, I own every piece that surrounds this. This is number 4. All the yellow is solar, or will be, before much longer, to which, in case you haven't figured it out, we have no benefit from. As you know, my family gets no benefit from this whatsoever. So we wanted to make sure that that it is, you know, very well buffered. And the concern, of course, is what does it do with that real value down the road? Because it does have some effect.
Marjorie, did you speak at the planning board?
I actually was out of state at the time, the planning board, but I did go and brought up all of this to Mr. Shields about the ludicrousy of, and obviously know it's part of the way you all just changed, I think, recently, the way this is done with the buffering in the back and the rear. But in this site, that makes no sense. You're actually buffering woods, which is insane, to buffer the woods. So that's when we said, you know, you've got to come across the front, the roadbed, where everybody's going to see it. And the lay of this land is such that from the time you hit the first corner, when you're coming down the road, you can see that entire massive field laid out in front of you. There's not like anything is hidden. The entire thing will be in your face.
So maybe, Mr. Meadwell, as far as the enhanced buffering that was agreed to, can you speak to what that is?
Well, and I think that what the board has before tonight is a general use rezone. You're not approving a site plan. You can't even add conditions to this rezoning request. So what I understand from the applicant is that it'll be a type B buffer, which is the 20-foot vegetative buffer along the fence. You know, one of the reasons that the buffering wasn't really looked at was because we increased that setback off of roadway 100 feet. So, you know, 100 feet, that's a considerable amount of distance from there. I know that it looks closer than what it seems, but, you know, we really took a lot of effort into studying what that setback would be and, you know, limiting the actual height of those solar panels to 15 feet. So, so with an 8-foot fence, you know, a 15-foot panel, you start to create that natural break that you had there. So, but for I think your purposes tonight are, you know, you're looking at the rezoning. You're not approving a site plan, but you're considering all those uses that could be allowed within that special purpose.
Well,
Ms. Foster, have you got anything else to add? I mean, your time's unlimited, but
Right. Well, I mean, it's, I don't know what all, you know, purposes they could potentially, I mean, obviously know why they're rezoning it so that they can move forward with it, with asking for this project, and it is a step process, but at the same time, that kind of scares me a little bit to think you just rezoning it to special use. It could be anything.
so at this point, we can't approve with conditions, Mr. Attorney?
Now, this is a special purpose rezoning itself, and the special purpose rezoning is unlike a special use where you add conditions to property, and all this is a different zoning classification other than RA. It's SP is what it is, and I'll let Andrew speak to that.
We created this district with this use in mind, with these standards, these design standards for that district itself.
To Commissioner Jones' question, though, to address this, could the applicants, Mr. Vogel, could come and give more detail on the concerns that have been noted, though, correct?
Oh, yes, they could.
Do you have anything to add based on the concerns that we've heard tonight from Ms. Foster?
I'll just, I think, reiterate, and I don't know the exact specifics of the type B buffer, but I know it is 20 feet in width. I believe it's a staggered double row of evergreen plantings that have the intent of being 6 feet within 3 years, and then continue to grow from that. So at this time, that's what we're planning to do around the entire site. And again, more than happy to do that, seeing the need based on the feedback that we received. So.
You said there's a 100-foot setback? Is that right? Is there much site work going on to achieve what you need to lay it out with, or is it pretty flat? Or
It's generally pretty flat. It's a slightly rolling hills area, so there might be some very minimal grading, but typically very light site work is needed for these solar farms.
Any other questions?
If this is approved, are you coming back to us with specifics for us to?
The use is permitted within that district, so, as I mentioned, it goes through our TRC to show compliance with the county requirements, codes, requirements that are set forth in the zoning.
Just on that point,
Go ahead.
These extra requirements that have been agreed to, we would just take it that the committee has taken that into account and they would be addressed.
Different than the project that the board heard there on Baltimore Road. I think there's a question about the easement and some additional buffering right there. So, we would remind the applicant of what they had promised the board that they would do to meet those requirements.
And Andrew, you might, with this board, you might go back over what those requirements are if you've got those available tonight for a special purpose zoning.
They're included in your agenda package.
Yes. But you might wish to go through those without them having to go back and find them in their agenda packet itself. And that is something that this board passed, or a board passed. I'm not sure if all members of this board were present. I don't think you were, but it was passed at one point in time as part of the amendment to the zoning ordinance itself.
So the minimum lot size is 25 feet. Lot width, there's no specified. 100 feet is the front yard setback. Side yard is 25 feet. The rear yard is 40. Any off-street loading or unloading are permitted to be within the district. The parking has to meet the off-street parking requirements. The buffer strips along the side and the rear. Access can only be to the state-maintained road. Have the community meeting. So those are the conditions for the SP district itself.
I believe those are actually found on packet page 84 of your packet too. You need to look over those.
Ms. Foster, have any of your other neighbors shared this concern that you have? Do you know of?
Well, yes, my mother, who is 86 years old and certainly not coming to anything like this, lives next door along with my brother. My sister lives at the piece that's connecting it on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, all of this was originally our farm. So we've gotten together and discussed it, and somehow or another I always get elected to be the spokesman. But my concern of what I'm hearing right now is I'm hearing what guarantee do I have that they have said they're going to put that buffer on that road? Because what you're reading to me says the buffer along the sides and the back. And you're saying once you guys pass it to the special use, they can do whatever they want as long as they meet what he just said. Where does that leave us?
Well, what I heard, and that's the reason I asked the question, but what I heard Mr. Meadwell say is when the site plan come back before him, the conditions that the applicant had agreed to would have to be adhered to before it would be approved.
Right. We would strongly encourage the applicant to meet those requirements.
And that is your only guarantee, so to speak, as I understand it.
If I could add something, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
We obviously work within the framework of the local, ordinances and such, and it is probably more common than not in a lot of places we go. We do have a special use permit type process where you can have conditions and things like that. And this is a condition that is routinely added where you do additional buffering to a specific site. So we're, happy to commit to this. It's just that your particular process doesn't have a way for us to do that other than what's been described. But we, we commonly do this, and from our company's perspective, we want to be good neighbors because we don't want anyone to not want us in the area, and it doesn't take long in a community. If you don't do what you say you're going to do, the word will come back to you folks. And if we had another project at some point in the future, we might not get as hospitable a reception. So it is to our interest to all over the state to do exactly what we say we're going to do and work with our neighbors to make them, good neighbors in terms of this project. So it's not that we're not willing to commit in some ways, just there's not a process within your ordinance for us to do that other than what's been described. So we're going to build the buffer around it like we say we're going to do.
If I can just add as well, just to hopefully provide a little bit of assurance further, but I am the project manager for this project, and so I will be working with the engineering team and the EPC team, the construction crews, to design the site. So once we transition this project from my department, which is the development department, it will still be me, working with those individuals. It doesn't immediately pass off to anybody else. So hopefully that provides a little bit more further assurance that I will, as I stand here tonight, honor this site plan that we've committed to at this setting.
All right, any other questions for the speakers? All right, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it may be something that you need to consider on your land use zoning on the this particular section as far as having some type of future discussion and possibly future modifications of this that deals with special uses or special conditions at that point in time. That's just something that you might consider down the road on this.
I just want to say this real quickly, Mr. Chairman. This has been a concern of mine for a little while that we're and this is my opinion, I speak for no one else, that we're taking usable quality acreage in Davie County, and as Ms. Daniel indicated, this isn't the first solar farm in Davie County. There are multiple of them, and there are multiple solar farms. And at some point, when green dollars dry up, someone's going to have to clean these sites up. And I understand that we have a requirement. I do understand that. But at some point, that day is going to occur, and I don't know how soon it's going to occur. And so that's just a personal concern of mine in regards to this specific issue. And I just felt I need to voice that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so at this time, we will declare the public hearing closed and then open it up to the board for discussion, for further discussion. All right. Seeing no discussion, entertain a motion to either approve, deny, or defer.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think it makes no sense to defer because we've been told there's no changes we can require. So deferring is I don't think an option here. But I'll be open to hear from what everybody else has to say.
Do I have a motion? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I will do this. I'll make a motion to defer
I'll second that.
for 30 days so that we can discuss have time to chew on this just a little bit.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to see it sometime in this 30 days that we address the inability in this current ordinance for us to put any kind of requirements on rezonings for the special purpose, where the Board of Commissioners could actually require that a company does exactly what they say they're going to do.
Okay, we could certainly look at that as part of this process. But any other, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of deferring this rezoning request for 30 days, raise your hand. Okay, 5-0. Thank you. Mr. Eller, if you would make a note to get with Mr. Midwell regarding Commissioner Poindexter's input.
Yes, sir, will do.
All right. Appreciate everyone hanging with us, but we are getting a little long here. Next is the consent agenda. Anyone have any questions about that? Comments?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. That is approved. Next, we move to the county manager's report.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be very brief. I wanted to thank Angela Grimaldo. She's our Golden Leaf Scholar. This is her last week. She's from UNC Chapel Hill. So, Angela, thank you for your contributions. And then Jordan Page is our intern from UNCG. I mentioned last time he'll be with us one more meeting. So, Angela, we thank you for what you've done for your time here in Davie County. I did want to mention, Mr. Chairman, the State Board of Transportation issued a resolution for Mr. Harold Lee Frank. Many of you know Mr. Frank. He's been here before to speak to you. You approved the resolution that sent this to Raleigh for the road naming of Highway 64, a portion of that from 64 to 801 to the Yadkin River Bridge. And the State DOT Board heard that. Mr. Frank was able to be there due to a rescheduling that was done. And they did present him with the resolution. So we want to again, congratulate Mr. Frank, thank him for his service to our country and to Davie County, and we'll begin moving this process forward with the Department of Transportation. So congratulations to Mr. Frank. Also, last but not least, I also want to again thank Mr. Spillman, Mr. Bullock, the town of Coolmey, and all of our staff for the continued planning for our Coolmey projects. So appreciate all the days, hours, weeks, months that have been put into that, and pleased about where we are. So with that, I'll cut my report short tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any old business to come before us this evening? Seeing none, do we have any new business? All right. We do have a closed session on the agenda, so I've told I have to read this. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A3 to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body. So moved. Motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Okay, we are in closed session. We'll be back here shortly. Okay, we're back in open session, and I think regarding the Gildan matter, entertain a motion on what our position is on their incentive agreement.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion not to draw back incentives already paid, clawback, excuse me, but not to grant any additional incentives under the current economic development agreement.
Okay, for the record, the the motion that's been typed up, could we enter that in the record? Would that be okay?
You may.
Okay. There's a lot of moving parts, but you're good with everything that's in the written agreement or the written motion. Okay. I have a motion from Mr. Poindexter. I have a second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Finney. Further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. That is approved, 5-0. All right, entertain a motion to dispense with commissioner comments. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.